Right, we're here at the scene of the crime, so to speak, where Underwater 2 was filmed. It's Ferry Meadows, and what we're going to be doing is a live match with myself. I've actually drawn as well, peg 104, which might not mean loads to a lot of you, but when you see exactly where I'm sat, I'm sure it's going to look familiar. So let's get on the box. We've got about 10 minutes and I'll run you through how I'm going to fish it. Okay, we've got just over a minute till the start. As I said, I'm on peg 104, which is on the Overton Lake. I'm keeping things really simple. I'm a big believer at a ferry. It's a one-line venue. I've gone 50 metres. I've had a bit of a plumb around. I reckon I'm in 10 to 12 foot of water. It's pretty flat all the way out. I would go a little bit further normally, but I'm an end sort of peg, although it does shallow up to the right. So I don't see any point going any more than 50. It's one line. The bream in here tend to move in and out, and I feel like if I had two lines, I could miss the boat, so to speak. So literally 50 metres. We've only got a few seconds to go. At the start, I'm going to put in, I reckon, because the water's coloured, it's a lot more coloured than when we filmed underwater. I'm going to put 8 7-hole guru bait ups in. That's the 40 gram. I find 40 gram just allows me to be a little bit more accurate in them. I'm not going to put a lot, just a sprinkling of micros, odd dead maggot, odd caster, and a tiny bit of worm. I'm really nervous about the worm because, as Underwater 2 showed us, worms here aren't always the one, but it's coloured. The river's been in, it's been flooded. I just feel like a little bit of scent, so I'm going to put a tiny bit in just to start with, just to make myself feel better. I feel like if I plough it from the start with worms, I could blow it up. But equally, I want to put a little tiny bit in. So I'm going to put 8 in, which is quite positive. I reckon I'm going to put, that's the all in. So I'll talk you through it while I'm doing it. I'm going to put 6 in on the bottom. So I'm going to put 6 in on the bottom and then 2 in at sort of half depth. So that's just hit the bottom there. Just going to wind up to it and then nice and nice clean release. Because the bait up feeders are tapered, you can actually feel them empty, especially when you're fishing braid direct as I am. So I'm not sure, I'll be honest here, I'm not sure how it's going to fish. Water to me feels really cold. There was a match on the other lake at the weekend and just under £60 won that. So that fished all right really, but this lake I'm not 100% certain on it. And this peg, it can be good. I'll be honest and say it wouldn't have been in, although we filmed underwater on it, we filmed underwater because it suited what we wanted to do. It's not what I'd call a noted standout peg that's won loads of matches, but it does offer me depth. On the downside, what I don't like about the depth is a lot of water's gone in here because obviously it's been a really wet winter, and cold water when it runs in sinks. And last year when I fished a few matches this time of year, the fish tended to be all on sort of the early numbers on the opposite bank. That's number 3. It's a bit shallower there and it just felt like the fish push in there. If I could have picked a peg today, I'd have gone sort of 3 to 8. So I say always give it a second to let the water hit it. Like I said, there isn't a lot out there feature wise. It's very flat. I mean, some people might, I could have probably fished a little bit closer in, but 50 is just a nice distance. Right, pinch of micros. Like I said, I'm not putting, I can put bait in, but I can't take it out. So it's just a case of more ground bait than anything. Because it's so coloured, I feel like smell is going to be really important, which is why I've put that tiny little smidgen of chop worm in. And obviously my mix is quite a powerful sort of pellety fish mealy mix as well. That's 4. Like I said though, I'm not 100% certain how it's going to fish. Could be like a 1 or 2 bite day, or it could be a 10 bite day, or it could be a red letter 20 bite day, but I doubt it considering how cold the water feels. The first job is going to be getting a bite, and you might be thinking 8 bait ups, that's a lot of bait, but if I measured these 8 bait ups and put them in a tub, it wouldn't be much more than a pint of bait, which when you consider the size of the lake, it's like you're throwing a thimble in the ocean. If it was a little bit clearer, I'd be more inclined to open them up in the water. But at the moment, I really want to be pinning everything to the deck. So that'll be my 6th on the deck. And I'm just going to put 2 in with mainly ground bait, just to put a bit of a cloudy column of smell through the water. I also think if you release a little bit higher, you get a slightly better spread, although hopefully a few fish will kick the bait about. Feeding an odd caster, odd pellet. I've not bothered. Corn can be really good here. I've not bothered with it purely on the basis the water's, compared to a commercial, it's not chocolate, but it's chocolate for Ferry Meadows. Right, so let that one hit. 1, 2, empty. So I'm just almost letting it get halfway. I'm not expecting a quick response today either. I always say when I fish Ferry, we're fishing 5.5 hours, 10:30 till 4. Perfect time to get your first bite or first indication is 45 minutes to an hour and a half. If I haven't got one, or anyone around's got me after an hour and a half, you're normally settling in for a long, hard day. Very rare you go in here. 1, 2. Right, that's my 8. Very rare you're going to go in here and get a fish first cast. Right, so that's bait up done. Kicking off what? I've set 2 12-foot Aventus Steve Ringer rods up, both 1.5 ounce tips, 008 pulsate braid, direct to a, well, not direct, I've got a prototype braided leader material. Fishing braid straight through, it's more direct, obviously, even with the braided leader, so I see everything, everything's magnified. I just prefer it, particularly when using a soft rod like this one is. And then my setup itself, I've got a 2-inch braided feeder link, one that we'll be bringing out later in the year, 22 centimeters of pure 022 fluorocarbon, and then I'm starting on a 50 centimeter 016 pure hook length to a 12 pole special. And rather than putting 3 maggots on like I would have done in the past, I'm going to put 4 on, because on underwater 4 and 5 sat a lot better than 3. Also, with the water coloured, I feel like bigger bait, more, it's going to be easier for them to home in on. It's different, I think, when underwater was here. It was very clear. Starting feeder, cage window, 30 gram, and then we'll just feel our way in. Obviously that bait separation is everything, as Underwater 2 showed us. So I'm keen to get everything nice and tight as quick as possible. That pure boom obviously should help kick everything out, and the heavier hook bait also helps too. But I'm expecting a, it's still, we're still almost in winter, so I'm expecting a slow start. But it's Ferry Meadows, anything could happen. Be nice to get an early sign in the first half hour, but I'm going to kick off with sort of 8 to 10 minute casts. Because it's not clear as such, I don't see any point being really busy to start with. Sometimes in the summer when it's really clear, I'd be busy, 2-3 minute chucks to start, get that cloud column going, but it's just too coloured for that. So I'm going to play the patient game a little bit more, keep an eye on obviously everyone else, or those that I can see, and then sort of evaluate I haven't been here this year, so I'm a bit out of touch, and I don't know how many fish I'm fishing for, which always makes a difference. So keep an eye on everyone else, and then see what I think is the honest answer. So we're on our first shot. I'm going to give this 8 to 10 minutes, and then we'll either update with a fish on, or we'll update on what's happened so far. First chuck, 8 minutes, no signs, which is, I'm not surprised. Rigs fishing nice and effectively, 4 maggots, not touched. I will vary the hook bait, but at the minute I'm not necessarily expecting any sort of instant response. I'm just putting a tiny smidgen of worm in the feeder. Like I said, it's just different because of the colour. How I'm fishing it today, I'll be fishing it a lot slower, I think. Or certainly to start with. I feel like I've got obviously the 8 bait ups in. Now it's just a case of seeing what type of day it's going to be. Like I said, the peg, it is a noted peg on here, but I wouldn't have picked it in, might be totally wrong and it'll be solid, but I wouldn't have picked it in my first sort of 10 pegs, so to speak, as in top today. But it isn't a peg without form, it's just not one that wins lots of matches. That was a quick response. It's not actually a bream. Well, it's not a big bream. That's literally second cast, and it's only been out 5 minutes. 4 dead reds. Feels like a skimmer. It's not like, if we get it out, you might be thinking, oh, it looks a bit big for a skimmer, but like anything up to sort of 3 pound, I'd say in Ferry is a skimmer. It's definitely not like a 6-7 pound fish, but most importantly, it's a bite. Obviously I'm on braided leader, and then obviously the 008 pulse 8, so nice soft rod, just take your time. Can hear the mower in the background. Oh, it's got a little bit bigger now. I think there's a little bit of weed there. I seem to remember from underwater too, Matt having an issue with a perch under his feet. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's a nice, it's a bream by some venue standards, but a skimmer by Ferry Meadows standards. So, unbelievable start. I reckon, don't know, 2 pound. Nice clean fish. Great start, to be fair, because I wasn't expecting anything this quick. Right, tell you what, that got caught in something on the way out, and my hook length's all, it's bad for your teeth, don't advertise that. My hook length's literally frayed, really badly frayed. Should always use scissors, as I'm now using. If you ever see any damage on your hook length, I mean, there is a lot of zebras. When I say zebras, I don't mean the 4-legged kind, I mean zebra mussels in here. And that hook length was proper, almost like somebody had put a razor blade down it. But that is, well, one of the best starts I've ever had at Ferry Meadows, so. Some people don't like catching one early, but there's always an argument, particularly when it's cold. It's just nice to catch one. So we'll keep doing what we're doing. Being a little bit rough loading the feeder. Don't mind a little bit coming off on impact, getting a bit of a better spread. Just feel it hit, get tight nice and quick so I get that separation. Literally just put in, I always get my next feeder ready, so tiny pinch of maggots, pinch of pellets, tiny, literally tiny bit of worm, just sift it through. What I did on that fish, again, I know I'm harping on about this a lot, but because of underwater, the one thing I learnt more than anything, bait separation is absolutely massive. So what I did after 2 minutes, and I'll do the same again now, just try and move the feeder, roughly what I feel is the length of the hook length. Not so much to move the hook bait, and I don't believe like the puff of cloud will be as effective today as it was in underwater, but it's straightening everything out. You know, and I might be moving the hook bait because that fluorocarbon boom might be kicking it out, but I just like the thought. The bottom's pretty clean. There's a little bit of sediment, odd bit of weed, etc. down there, but it's not too bad. So I'll leave it 2 minutes. What we've been going at, 1:16. So might as well just carry on through this, and I'll just show you unless it goes round straight away. And I'm just literally going to move it. Window feeders are brilliant for moving as well. They slide a lot smoother than some feeders. Amazing. I've got to think that fish damaged the hook length on the inside. It felt like it just got stuck in something, because it literally like someone had just put a razor blade up it. Well, we're at 2 minutes, so literally what I'm doing, just lift it, feel the feeder move, put it down. I'm not looking to drag the hook bait a million miles, just looking to get that separation, which I feel like means that if a fish does pick the hook bait up, it makes it a lot harder for it to get away with it, so to speak. If it picks it up when the line's really slack, like Underwater 2 showed, good chance it can swim around and spit it out. Whereas everything's tight, they seem to, there's a lot less chance of them getting away with it. So that's what Underwater 2 showed, and the bottom's right for doing it here as well. So I'm going to shorten this chuck down to 6 minutes, just on the basis that last bite come at 5.5, and that's a really early bite, literally second cast. And if there's going to be a few fish feeding, which that indicates there could be, might want to be a little bit more aggressive. So I'm going to go 6 minutes this chuck, maybe for 2 or 3 chucks, just so I'm keeping a bit of bait going in, just in case there is a few fish going to feed. Right, that chuck was 6 minutes. Second, obviously, chuck after the fish. Not overly surprised it didn't go straight round, but you never know. I did have a good plumb around, so I'm confident I'm not fishing on a bed of zebras. That's better. Last chuck wasn't. Obviously feeder hits, get tight as quick as possible. That's why I point the rod obviously down the line. Going to give this one 6 minutes again, and then if this doesn't go, I'll take it back out to sort of 8. I always think like catching a fish, I put 8 bait ups in and then caught a fish second cast. There's got to have been more than one fish there for it to have found my hook bait in amongst all the loose offerings. Well, not that there's a million loose offerings, but there's enough, more than enough for one fish. Hence why I've just upping it a little bit, as in 2 6-minute chucks. You know, I will chop and change feeders. That fish, I'm not saying it's thrown me, but it's come a lot earlier than I expected. but it's a good sign, even though it was a skimmer and not a bream. They don't swim around on their own. Ooh. Had an indication then. It didn't look, I'll be honest and say, it didn't look breamy. Looked more small fish like, maybe, I don't know. Not saying it was a perch. Let's have a look at the bait. There is no bait. Definitely an indication, but didn't look breamy. Looked more rattly, not smooth. Bream bites on here are normally very smooth. But probably another indication that I need to keep with the 6-minute chucks. Again, loading that medium cage window, quite rough. Get tight nice and quick again. That indication was virtually just after 5 minutes again. It's a very similar time to the skimmer bite. Just, I don't know, it was a lot more rattly. Normally I'd be devastated to miss a bite, but I'm confident as I can be that that wasn't a bream. The bream were just a lot smoother. That was just very rattly. But not a bad sign. 2 bites, 2 early bites. You know, I mean, Ferry Meadows is very unpredictable. It's like you can blank. That's the beauty of natural water bream fishing. So we've already achieved mission number 1, and that is not to blank. If I keep getting an odd indication, I might even go up to the large window. Just to up the bait a bit. It could be they're coming to the, because I've had a quick response to the 8. It might be worth just being a little bit more aggressive, but we're still only 39 minutes in, so I'm probably 9 minutes of that was baiting up. So we'll stick with the 6-minuters. Then maybe if I don't get a sign in the next 2 chucks, I'll put the large window on and have an 8 to 10 minute with a bit more bait. Maybe slightly more worm just to up the scent. But I don't want to push it too hard too early. Literally, in reality, we've only had 1 fish. Oh. Had another sign then. Well, again, not, I don't know, it didn't seem big fishy, but I actually thought it was going to be on. Let's have a see if the bait's marked. Bait's still on this time. No, not much. I'll change it because it looked like a bite. Again though, wasn't a, it could be skimmers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to the 4 maggots. Just because that's done bites. But on my other rod, I'm actually set up to fish herring worms, and if I miss another bite, I might just switch rods, same feeder and everything, and switch to the 2 little bits of worm on a hair, just to see. It could be they're skimmers. Great to obviously get bites, just a bit annoying that one, because I felt like it was on, but again it was more tap 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 tap, not being funny. Anyone who's fished ferry, normally you get a bream bite, it's pulling your rod in. Oh, that's a sign straight away. Got it. That's another skimmer, I think. Yeah, it is, yeah. Oh, it could be a perch. I'm just going to stand up, because whatever it got stuck in the first time, I don't want it getting stuck in again. It's not a bream. Well, I'd say it's another skimmer. That was a ridiculously fast bite. Like, my stopwatch is not even at a minute yet. It's smaller than the last one, I'd say. It's unusual, but I suppose because there's colour in here, there could be a few more small fish in here. No, it's a skimmer. I can see it on the top. It's not going to get stuck in Matt's weed bed. I mean, they're cracking fish. Be better if they were £5. Whoa. That's a shocking bit of netting, but we've got it. And they're lovely clean. What's that, £1.4, £1.6? Don't know, maybe £1.50. Lovely silver looking fish. And it's nice to be getting a few bites. Just be nice if the next one, when we pick it up, is one of them big nodders, like a 6 sort of pound fish. Because at the minute, match wise, somebody catches a bream, they're beating my 2 fish easily. Stick with a 4. So I'm putting a smear of chopworm in every chuck. Odd, probably 5 or 6 dead maggots. Little tiny bit of pellet, odd caster. Not much of anything. If the bites do continue though, I am going to consider going up a feeder size just to be a bit more aggressive. I've got my ground bait a bit, what I'd call a bit of a clag, so it's just slightly over wet, just gives it a bit of weight. Just going to chop a pinch more worms. I didn't chop much to start with. I'm going to chop a little bit more because I fed it and had a response. I've not put anywhere near the amount in it I would if I was attacking it with worms, but there's enough. I've put enough in to give a bit of a scent. Chopping it nice and fine, and then literally just a pinch in the mix, a couple of deads, pinch of pellets, and that's it. Not a lot of bait at all. Quite a bit of scent though with the ground bait as well. Just going to get a 30 gram large out ready, just in case. Just got this feeling that I might need to be a little bit more aggressive. The fact that is, I've put 8 bait ups in and had 4 bites in. What time did we start? In under an hour. And we're getting to that time now whereby, just give it just straighten that hook length. Getting to that time now where I'd expect a bream to come along. I've not seen any other fish caught, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been. Like so, I'm an M peg because it sort of shallows up into a bay to my right. So I haven't got a great view of other anglers. But I haven't heard anyone talking and saying so and so's empty in here. Right, I've gone 2 chucks, caught that second skimmer, and I've had a 6 minute, and this one's coming up to 8 minute. I've not had a sign. I've just got this nagging doubt about worms. So what I'm going to do, I've got a second rod set up. The only difference with this rod is hook length is 40 centimetres, not 50, 016 pure again. And I've got a 12 feeder special XS, but the eyed version. And I've got a little speed stop on so I can hair rig 2 bits of worm. So what I'm going to do is have a couple of chucks with worm on the hook. To do something different, I'm just going to put the bits, obviously my other rod's out, but I'm just going to put the worms on the hair, ready for when I switch over. just chopped 2 little bits. Got them in my ground bait ready. There's 2 reasons I'm doing it. Obviously, one is try a different hook bait, just to see. Skimmers can be a little bit fickle, but also to give me an indication if anything's actually eating the worms. Because if they're not, I'd like to ease back and take them out. That's not great. But if they are, then I might be able to up the worm a little bit. So like one of the worms is snapped in half, so let's put another bit on. I always chop a few bits up for the hook and just drop them in my ground bait bowl. But this chuck's going to be my long, that one's been out 9 minutes, so as soon as I've got this second bit of worm on, probably like, I don't know, half inch pieces. I'm going to stay on the medium window. I'm just trying to sort of feel my way in. That's it. 2 little bits. I've had no other indications though, other than I've had obviously 2 other bites, but I've had no line bites, so it's not like I feel. Just give that braid a nice wet. It's not like I feel there's a load of fish down there and I'm not catching them. I'm just wondering about this worm thing. 5 seconds to 10 minutes. Because I've had 2 fish, I'm thinking there is fish out there. I just need to work out what they want to eat, and if they don't want worms, I can sort of ease them back before I do too much damage. But if they do want them, maybe I can pull even more fish by accelerating, obviously, the amount I'm putting in. The reason I hair rig them and not hook them is just leaves the whole hook on show, so less chance of the worm doubling over. It's 2 bits of dendra. I'm not a red worm fan at Ferry Meadows. My attitude is I'm feeding dendras. If they want to eat worms, they'll be eating the worms I'm feeding. So it makes sense to put the same on the hook. By putting 2 bits of red worm on, I'm putting something different on. Might not make any difference, and I might not learn anything either. Like I said, I've not had any liners, so I can't say, oh, there's a lot of fish out there milling about and I've not got it right, I've not got the right hook bait on, etc. Just prepare another hook bait. But if this goes straight round on worms, then that's a great indicator that I probably can feed a little bit of worm. Because at the moment I feel like I'm fishing a little bit safe. Whereas at some point I'm going to have to take a risk. Tell you what, first chuck on the worm, we've got a fish. I actually went to twitch that. I'm not sure, well, I am sure that fish was already on. Don't know whether it took it as I twitched it or as underwater showed it had been swimming around with it in its mouth for 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds. But literally as I went to try and move it the length of the hook length, bear in mind slightly shorter hook length as well, the fish was already on. I don't believe it had it on the move. It literally was there. It's not a bream. I'm just stood up again because of that big bank of whatever it was. Feels like another skimmer, which great to see. Yeah, it's a skimmer. Amazing really, because anyone who fishes very regular, I'll tell you, skimmers are actually quite rare on here. And I've had 3 of them. The only downside is somebody catches a bream and they beat my 3 skimmers. have a look. Yeah, nicely hooked in the scissors. Again, lovely clean. I reckon £2. Beautiful looking fish. Just pulled the worms off the hair, so they need changing. But because of that fish, I'm just going to flick a bit more worm in the mix, just have then. Because that fish, well, the stopwatch is only on at 3 minutes now, so that fish has come really quick. Well, it would have been on the twitch, so 2 minutes. That fish had got that bait within 2 minutes. Only problem with hair rigging worms is it is a little bit slower, particularly when you're out of practice like I am. There we go, 2 little bits. Sometimes you can catch multiple fish on the same bits. Right, I've upped the worm in the feeder this time. So instead of like a sort of a big pinch, just fettled through. We are an hour and 15 in, and I've had more bites than I thought we were going to get all day. The only downside is I've probably got, what, 5? Probably got a bream's worth of skimmers now. And normally where there's bream, there's skimmers. Where there's skimmers, there's bream even. I'm just going to just fettle it through. Mix is quite like wet and heavy, as I sort of said. Still put an odd dead maggot through as well. What I've been doing is obviously fishing that mainly the 6-minute cast, and on 2 minutes just giving it a twitch. The reason I'm going 2 minutes is just letting the water get in the feeder at the bait, so not only am I twitching it and straightening the rig, I'm also getting a nice clean release of bait from the window feeder as well. I have got the big window out, but I've not chucked it yet, but I'm thinking it's definitely coming out at some point. Right, caught that skimmer first drop on worms, then nothing that chuck. So I've just eased off the amount of worm I'm putting in this chuck, because I did go really rich that last one, just to see. From what I can make out, there's not much being caught, which isn't surprising considering the time of year. But also it gives me a guide that there's not a stack of bream feeding, so I can probably be a little bit less, I don't have to worry about being too aggressive. That said, if I don't get one this chuck, I'm going to put the big window on, the large 30 gram, and have a 10-minute. My only slight reservation with that is the bite times have been quick. I think I've had like an inside a minute, a 2 minutes, and a 5.5. And the 2 missed bites were obviously both fast-ish. But sometimes a 10-minute chuck can just settle the swim again. Like I said, there's not loads of fish coming. Well, I haven't really heard of any other than my 3 skimmers. Alan next door's had 1 bite but been cut off on a zebra mussel bed. And I've heard of 1 other fish lost. I've not seen any nets going out. So I don't think there's much being caught. There's not much talking from the other bank. So we're at that time though. And on the plus side, I've had a bite. In fact, I've had several bites, so it's just the fact I've not had a bream, but hopefully they'll come. This chuck's been out just over 7.5 minutes. I'm going to give it till 8. This is the second, of his third cast on worms. I had that first fish, but I've not had a bite since, so I'm unconvinced, so to speak, at the moment. But I'm going to give this, well, it's got 10 seconds till 8 minutes. Then I'm going to put the big window on and have a 10-minute. Then if that doesn't work, I'll go back to the medium window. I'm going to go back to maggots, maybe have 3 or 4 like 3-minute chucks just to try and restart the swim. There has been a bream caught around the corner, so it's not like there's none, but round the corner's a long way from me. So I'm going to switch it over to the large. Just more bait. If I'm going to have a long chuck, I'd rather have a bit more attraction around the bait. Bear in mind the water's coloured, I might need a bigger feeder. That said, there's not a lot of fish being caught, so not overly happy with that chuck. Didn't quite. One thing I'll say is, and I've said this a million times, if you're not happy with your chuck, chuck it again. It hit the clip, but I didn't really adjust to the bigger feeder. Nearly had a duck. I want to, rather than just hitting the clip, I want to wallop the clip so I know everything's nice and straight and I'm fishing properly. Just going to put a fresh bit of worm on as well. So like I said, if you have a missed chuck, always better to chuck it again. A little bit of bait falling through the water doesn't hurt either. That's better. Right, I'm going to settle in now for a 10, well hopefully not settle in for a 10-minute, but I'm going to give it 10 minutes, and if this doesn't go, I'm going to switch it back to maggots and almost cut the worms out again, or at least reduce it to a smidgen. Well, I was just settling in for a 10-minute and I did have a bite, but again, small fish bite. Didn't even look like maybe it was a skimmer, but it had been in, what, 6.5 minutes. Worms are a bit chewed. Don't know, I'll be honest and say I'm not overly feeling the worms at the minute, so I'm going to go back to maggots, but put the big window on. So be positive with the bait, but go back to maggots. I've just not, don't know, worms haven't been they've not been a miracle bait. Not saying they were a bad bait either. Going to feed a few more maggots as well. Just feel like this next hour I really need to be pushing on. And at the minute, that's not really happening. I'm not convinced there's any bream. Well, silly to say there's no bream out there, but I don't think there's any bream feeding at the moment in the swim. So what I'm going to do is, I've got the large window on. I'm going to have 3-4 minute chucks, quite a few maggots, and an odd caster in. Keep that ground bait nice and wet. Just to see if I can trigger something. Because I feel like at the minute, I've had my 3 skimmers, but I'm not really going anywhere. That said, it's better than no bites. But it's not, I've not had a bream, and it's going to be bream I need. Obviously 20 skimmers would be nice, but I really do need, just get that bit of separation with that twitch, the underwater 2 twitch. That's it. I do get the impression it's quiet. Alan Taylor's on my left. He's had 1 skimmer, and then round the corner I've heard of 1 bream. So it's not fishing its head off, but I just feel like I'm a fish or 2 short, and I've had no liners, so I can't say there's a load of bream milling around out there at the minute. So I'm going to have 3 4-minute chucks with a large window, and if I don't get a bite, go back to the medium and then settle back in. So I'm just putting a little bit of bait down, but at the same time I'm giving myself a chance of a bite. I'm on the second of my 3 4-minute chucks on the large window, the large cage window. Just obviously 4 maggots on the hook. Just add a little plink then. I'm going to give this chuck, when I say a plink, I'm on about a little indication. Again, a rattle more from a little fish. At the minute I just don't feel there's any bream on the bait. So what I'm going to do next chuck, stick to the 3 4-minuters. I'm going to put a single maggot on. Obviously a single maggot in underwater 2 was incredible. I felt like the water was maybe a little bit too coloured for it, but it's worth a 4-minute chuck. So next chuck, again it'll be 4 minutes, large window, but I'm going to put a single maggot on, just to give it a straighten, just to see if they'll pick up a single bait. Maybe they are smaller fish, maybe they're just, I feel like if they were £1+ skimmers that I'd be getting better indications. Like I say, I'm saying that was a plink from a small fish. Maybe it was a little line bite. Line bites aren't always very slow pull rounds, so it could have been a skimmer near the feeder perhaps. But if this doesn't go, which it's got 1 minute and 20 to go, then I'm going to put a single maggot on, have another 4-minuter, and then reassess, because it's gone really quiet at the minute. I feel like, I don't know, it's that awkward. Is it just fishing really hard, or have I not quite got it right? Are there no bream here? They're all the questions I've got at the minute. But from what I can see, there's just not been a lot caught. And I do normally, as a rule at Ferry, last 2 hours, last hour and a half, if you're going to get a big hit, as in an arrival, they'll feed late. So we have got the best part of the match to come. Just be nice to know there was an odd un out there. Well, I had that indication, and when I reeled in, that bait had been damaged. So a fish had obviously, even though it looked like a little fish, something had obviously chomped the maggot. I've gone back out from a 4-minute chuck on a single maggot. It's not moved. I've just shortened the hook length down to 20 centimetres. I don't feel like there's a stack of fish out there feeding and I'm not catching them, but it's worth a try. Because at the minute I'm not putting anything in the net. Mind you, most of the people I can see aren't either. Bait's not even, well, it's dead anyway, but it's not scared. So I've literally short 20 centimetre hook length, still a 12 pole special. I'm going to go big on the hook bait again. because that's produced the bites, or the indications, whatever you want to call them. So we're going to go with four dead reds. I'm going to stay on the large. I'm going to be a bit more patient with this chuck though, and go back to the 8-minute chucks. I've just had 3 4-minuters, so there should be a bit of bait on the bottom again. So I'm going to be a little bit more patient with this chuck. Like 20cm hook length, 12 pole special, 4 dead reds. Nice big hook bait. Just to see if short hook length, bit of bolt effect. Don't know, maybe I don't feel like there's bream out there, but Underwater 2 did teach us that there can be bream there and you just don't know about it. But equally, I feel like I'm chucking quite regular now and not getting anything. So I feel like settling down for an 8 to 10 minute short hook length, big hook bait. I know I'm fishing. I just need a response. Strange, because I had such a, for Ferry, I had such a good start with those skimmers, as though they came to the initial bait and then I've sort of lost my way. But like I said, from what I can see, there's not much being caught. So it's not like someone's got 10 bream and I'm miles off the pace. And I don't feel like it's impossible to get a bream. I just need an arrival. And I always feel like it's a big water, I need some bait out there. But if this doesn't go this chuck, I might have just like a little bit of a rethink. Maybe work on the basis there's a bit of bait down there and try going the opposite end and dropping down a size. I've also got a couple of prototype rocket feeders. I could chuck them as well, just to try and cloud it up a little bit, just for a slightly different presentation. I've got some slim lines as well, again for a slightly different presentation. But I've not had loads of indications to make me think, oh, there's a load of bream on the bottom and they're milling around. Or most of the indications I've had have looked like bites. Well, all the indications have looked like bites. Some of them have looked like very small fish. But I feel like I'm being quite busy without any end product, other than the fact I feel I am building, hopefully setting the peg up for a later arrival. So that's the Ferry. The 20cm hook length and the big bunch of maggots. Had a 10-minute on that on the large window, nothing. So I'll switch back to the hair rig worm, 2 bits of worm again. Just gone down to the small window, the small cage window, and I've sort of, I wouldn't say crammed it with worm, but I've put quite a bit of worm in on it. The idea, little feeder, very rich in worm, just chuck it in the middle of the ground of what I've fed, with worm on the hook. Nothing's happening anyway. From what we can make out, there's not been many bream caught at all. So I feel like, just rather than just keep ploughing it in, putting loads of bait in, being really aggressive, little feeder, except there's a bit of bait on the bottom, and fish for a bite at the minute. We're just over 2 hours in, and there's been very few bream caught. So if I could pick up another 2 or 3 skimmers, that would be good. But at the moment the swim seems really dead. It's strange, because I had that quick response and now it's sort of slipped to where I sort of more expected it to be. Like I said, I don't think it's impossible the bream can arrive, but as much as I like being mega aggressive, I just feel like Underwater 2 sort of taught me, don't need loads of bait on the bottom to catch a bream. Oh, is that a sign? That looked like, I was about to say it looked like a liner, but it's a skimmer. That's interesting, because obviously I've just gone down to the small feeder. Proper nodding. Obviously when you're fishing basically braid and then a braided leader, everything's so aggressive. This one feels even smaller. Might even not It could be a hybrid or a roach. But that was that small cage window, plenty of worm, 2 bits of worm on the hook, definitely a bit smaller, and I've got a bite, so it does show there's fish out there. They might not be bream. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's another skimmer, a smaller one, but we reckon 14 ounce, I reckon. Don't think I'll get £1 for that one, but it's nice just to be getting to get a bite, and obviously when you get bites it gets you in and out as well. So as you can see, little cage, well, small cage window, not the extra small. But that was reasonably quick bite, under 5 minutes. 2 little bits of worm. I've got plenty of worm in the ground bait now, probably more than I've had, well, definitely more than I've had all day, but obviously little feeder, so I'm almost putting like a little worm bomb in the middle of the ground bait and a few dead maggots that I've already fed. One thing that is apparent is bites are quick, like as in I haven't managed, the 2 sort of 10-minute chucks just haven't worked at all. So I feel like I'm probably better off at the minute with the smaller feeder and trying to be a bit busier. I'm going to chop a few more worms. I'm not a massive fan of chopping a huge quantity of worms. I prefer to do smaller batches as and when I need them. I do feel like worms, a fresh chop can be really good. So rather than chopping like half a kilo or something at the start, even if you know you're going to need them. So I've always got some like fresh scent in the water. Still going to keep feeding an odd dead maggot in with it. But at least that was a bite, and at least makes me feel like I'm moving in the right direction. As in, I'm fishing more for bites now rather than just limiting myself to trying to get a big arrival of bream that, who knows, it might not come. We're 2.5 hours in and I've got my 4 skimmers, and like, I'll be honest, like, I feel a little bit like should be doing better, but at the same time got to base it on what I can see and what I know. From what I know, opposite me there's been very little caught, in fact, well, nothing that we know of. Alan Taylor on my left got 2 skimmers and a roach, and then there's a 1 bream on the straight, and that's pretty much all we know of. I don't know about the early numbers, which I would have fancied, but early rumours were they weren't catching either. So it's like, at the minute, I feel like, yes, I need to do something, need to make it happen, but equally, probably doing as well as anyone. So I don't really want to blow my swim up by attacking it for fish that aren't going to feed and then find out that £10 wins the match. Because I'm 1 bream away and I've got £10. When, you know, I mean, and £10 can win on it. It's natural water bream fishing. If they don't want to feed, they don't feed. But it's, I can't seem to sort anything that's going to get me regular bites. I put this small window on with 2 bits of choppy. Got a pound, about 14 ounce of pound fish first cast. Not had a fish since. I'm on my 3rd chuck since the fish. I'm leaving this one out a little bit longer, but I do feel like bites are coming quicker. There's no pattern to anything, it's just very odd bites. I am thinking, because I like to be busy and I like to sort of make it happen, I think I'm going to have a couple of chucks on this prototype rocket. A rocket will just cloud it up a little bit more. Maybe take a bit of the worm out again. and then cloud it up with a rocket, like just 2 or 3 chucks, and then chuck the window back over it. I'm just trying to, I always think I'm not going to bore fish on. If it was as simple as just chucking it in and leaving it and boring a bream on, everyone would be catching, and they're not. So I need to do things that are going to help me. Maybe last hour and a half I might need to be more patient, but at the minute I'm just fishing for a bite at a time. So I need to do things to try and make that bite, try and pull a few fish into the swim. I'm very conscious of the fact I got an instant response when I baited up, and I baited quite aggressively. Could I put 2 more bait ups in? I think that's going to be my next. I'm going to leave this another 15 seconds so it gets to 9 minutes, but I've not managed any fish leaving it in, which suggests they're off bottom or certainly not settling and picking up any amount of bait. So I'm going to have 3 or 4 chucks on that prototype rocket. That's 30 gram. Probably stick with worm on the hook for the time being. Oh, just had a tiny, like a little tap. But again, like, just going to feed it some slack. Not a big fish tap, like a little, like a roach or something just pecking at it. Not an indication where I think, oh, there's a bream in the swim, or there's a 2-pound skimmer. It was more like just a sharp rattle. So it's not devoid out there, it's just not got the right species in my swim at the moment. So I'm going to give this now till 10, because I had that indication, just in case. Just going to give it another 20 seconds. But you can tell a lot, I always think, by indications. That's just like a sharp rattle, like something just pulling at the worm. It wasn't a slow, smooth movement. It just doesn't strike me as a fish of any size. Like an inch pull, like nice and, oh, and again, just pecked it again. It just looks like a little tiny fish. Well, I wouldn't say tiny, it could be 4 ounce, but it doesn't, the bite isn't smooth enough for it to be something of any size. Well, that's at 10 minutes. And it's not hanging on the end. You know, I mean, at this stage, like a 4 ounce fish isn't really a great interest. I'm looking for fish that are ideally pound plus. Right, let's clip the rocket on. Oh, the worms look okay, certainly not chewed up. There's a little bit, a tiny bit of weed on the bottom of this, but nothing that really worries me as such. That's all right. That should just give off a little bit more cloud on the way down. I'm going to keep it to 4-minute chucks and just try and get some little bit of cloud going in, and then maybe try and pin one on the window. I've always believed cage to attract them, window to catch them. So rather than just sitting there doing nothing, I'd rather be busy. I don't feel like I'm harming the swim. It's like nothing I'm actually feeding, as in particle wise, as in worms, dead maggots, casters, a few pellets, is doing any harm. I can't say it's doing any. So I might as well keep trickling a little bit of bait in. It'd just be nice to start getting a few indications. You know, I'm sure there's, at some point, a few bream are going to feed somewhere. It's just whether they choose to feed here. Hello. I've had 4, but no bream. 4 skimmers. It's not. No, it's not fishing very well, I don't think. Typical. Oh. Right, I've just switched, obviously, to that rocket. I was on the 3rd of the 4-minute chucks, and this feels, actually went down to a single piece of worm on the hair. Been fishing 2 little pieces. I went down to the single piece. Again, trying to think a little bit about underwater. If there's one there, they were quite cute when there's not many fish feeding. So like if they're getting used to picking up single bits of choppy, one bit might be better, and that's only been in just over 2 minutes. I'm not saying it's a proper bream, but it's not a pound skimmer either. That's on that rocket, just sort of slopping it. I was going to have the next chuck on the window, but I'll have to have this next chuck on the rocket again. Definitely a slightly bigger fish. Let's have a look how big it is. Oh, it's a better one. That's a proper one. That's a proper Ferry Meadows bream. I reckon that's probably, it's got to be £6. Give him his own keep net. Right, see if we can repeat the trick. Gonna stick with single piece. One of the things underwater's made me feel is they can be, that's a terrible bit of worm. They can be a lot cuter. They can be really, you can have bream in your swim basically and not realise, because they're just picking up little bits and pieces, because there's not loads there, so they can afford to be a bit choosy. Well, as you just saw, I just had my first bream, but as I netted it, I knocked the mic off and it went in the lake, so that obviously is not ideal, but we're back mic'd up, so we've got a bream. I reckon we've got double figures now. From what I'm hearing, that's as good as anyone. That was very much out of the blue though, but a proper bite. I've had another chuck since the bream with no bite, and now I'm back in again. Obviously I caught the bream on that prototype rocket, but if I don't get a bite this chuck, I'm going to chuck the medium window again, on the basis I've clouded it up. Maybe I can just drag, maybe there's one milling around off bottom, or I can just pin it with a window. That's sort of my theory anyway, but that just goes to show you again, like a change of hook bait. I don't know how long that bait might just have arrived, it might be coincidence, but changing the hook bait, little tiny bit of worm rather than 2 bits, and a bream. In my head, and obviously on the back of underwater, that fish could have been there half an hour just milling around picking up little single offerings, but it needed the right hook bait to trick it. I think it's different when there's a large number of them in the swim, but the way it's fishing today, there just isn't a large number of bream feeding. They might feed, we've still got the best part of 2.5 hours, so there's every chance of a proper visit, particularly that last hour tends to be game changing if it's gonna go. So what I'm going to do is this chuck, if it doesn't go in the next 40 seconds, I'm going to switch back to the medium, just have a couple of chucks on that, see if I can pin something to the bottom. Just feeding little bits and pieces basically, not feeding any amount of anything. Oh, I thought there was that was a sign. I don't know if that was definitely like a little skimmer bite, just like tap 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 tap. Not a bream bite again, but it was definitely a bite. I can't honestly believe it's not on because of that bite. It's pulled the worm down the hair, not chomped it. I'm going to have another I'm going to have one more chuck on the rocket. Because I just feel I'd be stupid to come off it having caught a bream and then just missed a bite. That's not great. I honestly expected to pick up then and that'd be on. I didn't expect to pick up and be into a bream, but I thought I was going to be into a skimmer. It just looked a typical skimmer bite. Little tiny, like, I don't know, barely half an inch piece. Basically, I'm trying to fish like what I've got on the hook, well, what my hook bait match the hatch. Little fish. Well, I missed that skimmer bite, and then I've just had another 4-minute, and then I've chucked back out, and I've had like a 10-seconder, single little bit of worm, still on the rocket. While I'm getting bites, I don't see that I want to be changing. I'm pretty sure this is another skimmer, or maybe a hybrid, or a big roach, something along those lines. It's not a bream. The way it's shaking its head. Skimmer. Lovely fish, these skimmers. No, another pound. So we're literally 2 hours 15 sort of to go. I've got 5 skimmers now, and I've got my bream. So I reckon I'm on 13, 14 pounds, which from what we understand is right on the pace. I think Graham West has got a bream, a tench and a skimmer, so he maybe have a little bit more than me, but not much. Literally, definitely within a fish. And then other than that, it's really hard. That said, it's one of those days where like somebody gets 2 in 2 chucks, they're like, if they're not winning, they're banging the race. So I'm just fishing that single piece of herring worm, still chucking the rocket, and just being a bit busy. I like to be busy. I feel like I'm making my bites at the minute, rather than just sitting there hoping something's going to happen. I'm making it happen, and there's no reason why. What's going on there? Wind just caught the braid a little bit, that chuck. Oh, and although it was a nice chuck, I don't know, something's not. I don't feel as though it's gone in quite right. Sometimes you get a nagging doubt about a cast, and I've got that nagging doubt this chuck. So I'm gonna, rather than leave it, I'm gonna re-chuck it. Sometimes you just felt like when I was tightening up, the feeder moved. Didn't seem as tight as it should have been. So when that happens, if you're not happy, rather than waste a chuck, you know, I mean, it might have gone round us, so it's a lie to say waste a chuck. Sometimes you're better off just chucking it again. Feeding wise, still, I wouldn't say I'm obviously being quite aggressive with the ground bait because it's a decent size feeder, but with the loose offerings, just literally smidges. It's a smidgen of worm, 4 or 5 dead maggots. I'm not even going to bother with a cast of this, and then just literally, I'm working out one corner of the bowl, almost turning it into a putty-like paste. But I feel like switching to the rocket's been better, or it's coincided with a window. I changed my hook bait as well, which might have made a big difference. So what I'm thinking now, and I've said this a million times, if it doesn't go this chuck, 'cause I can't switch feeders while I'm catching, that would be ridiculous. I'm going to switch back to the rocket. I feel like, not the rocket, to the cage window, medium. Same obviously mix in the feeder. I can be a little bit more accurate. I felt like the last 2 chucks haven't straightened the braid as much as I wanted it to. When I say straighten the braid, they're hitting the clip, but I've got a little bit of a bow, whereas I feel like I'll be able to blast that window and really hit the clip harder and get everything arrow straight. Might not make any difference, it's a confidence thing. But I feel like there's more than enough, particularly ground bait on the bottom now, to hold an odd bream, a few skimmers, and like from what I can see, I've had more bites than anyone, so I'm obviously not doing it wrong. Just another bream would be nice about now. We're heading in obviously to the last 2 hours. I do think last hour and a half everything could change. If the bream are going to have a proper chew, I know I've said this quite a lot as well, that's the time. I know at the weekend a lot of fish got caught in the last hour. A lot of people who'd got like 2 or an hour to go finished with 6s and 7s. So there's definitely a chance of a late burst. So that's the plan. Right, didn't get a bite that chuck, so I'm taking the rocket off and going back. Same hook bait, a little bit of worm, going back to the window. Just feel like it's going to straighten everything out a bit better, and I can be hopefully a little bit more accurate, although that wasn't my finest ever cast. We've got 1 hour and 40 minutes to go. I had that bream, that skimmer, felt like I was getting somewhere, and then it's petered out. I've alternated between the window and the rocket, and now it's dead again. Still think there's a chance of a visit. We've heard there's 2 people with free bream for like £20. I reckon I've got 6, 13, £14. So like on one fish, one proper bream away from possibly winning the match. But I feel like I'm going to need more than one in this closing hour and a half if I'm going to win. I don't think one's going to be enough, but it's not impossible. You can often get 2 in 2. There just seems to be, that was horrendous, there just seems to be a few areas where there's more, like in the straight to my left, in this sort of 110, I think 112 and 116 have both got 3 each. And then opposite, there's a tench and a bream and a skimmer, not much else, which is strange because I'd have fancied that area more this morning. That's better. Just doesn't seem like the sort of day where it's suddenly gonna fill up. I don't know whether to have a few chucks back on the maggot. I've been on this worm now for quite a while, still trickling a few maggots in. So I don't know whether to have 20 minutes, 20 minutes, which is sort of 4 chucks on maggots on the basis there might be one there purely eating maggots and not worms. It's strange, I just haven't been able to be fair, I've had more bites I think than anyone in the match. Like literally I've got 6 fish, I don't think anyone else has got more than 3. But I haven't got 6 bream. So I've made a few bites. I could just do with a nice kicker fish now, about 5-6 pound, to set me up for maybe a couple in the last hour. It's strange because changing things has worked at times, but nothing's been consistent. But like I said, there's not been many fish caught, so I'm perhaps being a little bit harsh on myself saying things haven't been sustained, because nobody's managed to sustain any bites. Normally anything between 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, just give it a twitch, what I think is roughly the length of the hook length, get everything nice and straight. But I've had bites before the twitch and bites after it, so it's just a confidence thing in my head. Once I've twitched it, pretty sure I've got great separation then between hook bait and feeder, so if a fish does pick it up, I should get a positive bite. We're just at that stage. I feel like we're at the stage now where it's too late. I have toyed with the idea of putting a couple of bait ups in, but I feel like that's too late now. Hour and a half to go. I don't see an instant response coming from it. So I think if I was going to do that, I needed to do it an hour ago. So I feel like maybe if nothing this chuck, back on maggots on the window for 20 minutes, which will be sort of 3 forecasts. And then go from there. I'm half tempted, because I've been quite busy for the last hour, I'd say, to let this one sit for sort of 8-10 minutes. Sometimes they can definitely be spooked by regular casting. It's almost like a 10-minute let the swim settle a little bit, so there's not a constant like splosh of a feeder going in. I'm just trying to vary as many things up as possible. I don't think there's a massive shoulder bream suddenly going to turn it up, but if I could nick 3 more bites, I think that would be amazing. So maybe sometimes a 10-minute chuck, it might not go on the 10-minute chuck, but it just settles the swim down again. Keeps it quiet. I know there's bait on the bottom, there's still a chance of a bite, but then when I get busy again, it's like you get an instant response. So this has been out 3 minutes 40. So I think I'm going to leave it at least 8 minutes. Just see whether I can just pick up a bonus fish, or alternatively it'll just quieten the swim down. It'll pretty much take me to an hour and a half to go, which will be taking us into the best, in theory, the best hour of the day, but you never quite know with this place. No bites on the rocket or the worm, so I'm going to go back to the maggot. I'm putting 5 on, 20 centimetre hook length, back to the window, just see if there's one there. Change your hook baits. Maybe there's a fish out there that's just been picking up a few maggots and nothing else. Since underwater, I'm always trying to visualise that there is fish there. So I'm going to have 4 or 5, well no, probably 3 6-minute chucks on this. There just doesn't seem to be anything for leaving it in. Like I said, I've just had that 10-minute, nothing. And like I look around and everyone's sort of fishing longer chucks because the fishing is hard and no one's catching anything. So I feel like my best chance of a run is to be busy. I might, with an hour to go, if nothing's happening, I might take a little bit of a gamble with the worms. You can't kill a swim where there's no response anyway. I've trickled worms in and on and off all day, so it's not like I'm not going to have a regret of like not feeding any. It's just a question of whether I could feed a few more. "30 minutes to go." The reason there's been no more update is because nothing's happened. I'm back on maggots. I've alternated between maggots, worms. I've cut everything out apart from pretty much chucking neat ground bait now. I'm not sure where the next bite's coming from or if it's coming. It's always possible, but it feels like it's gonna have to come completely out the blue. I don't know what to do. Realistically, obviously, whether to gamble or be really patient for the last half an hour and almost try and bore one on, or to have two quick like 3 minuters maybe. We're back on the rocket, and then have a long like 15-minute to finish, just to see. But nothing's happening around this area. Where there are some fish, odd ones are getting caught, and like this area of the lake seems completely to have switched off. I just feel like I should have had another visit. I don't feel like I've done. Sometimes you think, oh, I think I've got it wrong. Watch out for this one. But today I'm just not. I'm not 100%. If I came back, I wouldn't fish it any differently. I feel like I worked hard for my bites. I've been a little bit unlucky, I think, with size of fish. But you take what takes your bait. It's just at the moment that this last hour and a half, instead of getting better, it's got worse. But from what I can see, it's the same for everyone, other than like there's a little pocket of fish down in that corner up to my left, and then there's a really odd fish on the other bank. I did think like a couple of hours ago, if you'd have said to me, I'd have said last hour, I thought could be really good. But for whatever reason, whether it's the fact it's gone bright, wind's dropped, I've had no indications either all day as in liners. It's not like I've had a couple of big liners where you think a bream swam through. It's just literally got harder. After that sort of first hour and a half, it's got harder and harder. So I don't know whether to put the rocket back in and really slop it up and just fish that for the last, well, 25 minutes now. This has been out 12 minutes, so it's my longest chuck of the day. I think I'm going to let it go to 15. Purely on the basis I've not had a 15-minute, but there's so few fish coming out that it's hard to see why I'm going to get one. But never say never. I've done enough moaning there in the last 3 minutes, so I thought I might moan one into just pulling the rod in. I do feel like they're most likely to be off deck now. Like now the wind's dropped and everything, I'd say a lot of the clarity's gone out the water. So I'm tempted to have literally like maybe 3, even like 1 minuters, really sloppy ground bait, and try and pull one in that way, because it's that time in the day now where everyone's pretty much leaving it out. So I'm going to put the rocket back on, 3 1-minuters, and then maybe a 6 7-minuter. We've got a plan. Unbelievably, I'm on my 3rd cast, 1-minute cast, and it's gone. I don't know who was more surprised, me or the fish. Literally, I've had an hour and a half of nothing, and I've just had, with the rocket on, 3 casts of literally 1 minute each. This is the 4th one, and it's gone round on 50 seconds. We've got 17 minutes left. If I could just get this one out, get back, I'll be honest and say, I'm not saying I'd given up, because I hadn't, because obviously that's why I'm doing the 1 minute chucks, but confidence had fell. But providing I get this fish out, it's great proof of like, you've got to work hard. I honestly don't believe I'd have caught this fish if I hadn't have worked the swim. You can't, don't get me wrong, you can't chuck every 1 minute for 5 hours. But if you do it at the right times, it can give you an impact, which hopefully I'll get this out and we'll see that impact. If I could get this out, part of me is even thinking, could I get another one? And I've literally gone from thinking I'm never going to get another bite again to like I've got time for one more. It's on 4 maggots again, this one. Literally neat, well, ground bait with an odd maggot in, just slopped up. I do think the colour's massively dropped out as the day's gone on. I know the wind's dropped, but I'm sure I can see a lot further down in the water now. I really could do with getting this one out. And I'm still thinking, even if I can't win the match, I could win my mini match, if you know what I mean, because obviously he's only paying the winner and the sections. So if I get this one and then maybe one more, you never know, or even this one, feels like a decent fish. Not seen it yet. It's just in that area where there's those mussels or something on the bottom. I can see it under the water now. It's a proper one. Get him. One more. I want one more now. I reckon that's, I think that's definitely 5. Maybe a little bit bigger. Nicely hooked, 12 pole special, right in the scissors. Pop him in the net with his mate and see if we can get, we've got, well, 14 minutes basically, so I've got, I don't know whether to keep chucking every 1 minute, because that would be a lot of chucks, but I think I'm going to have another 3 1-minuters now. Literally ground bait slopped up in the cage. Got a little bit of slime on the hook length. I'm on the 20 centimetre hook length as well. I can't say that's the reason I caught that fish, but just in case you're wondering how long the hook length is. So I'm going to literally have another 3 1-minuters and then see where we are. I literally didn't see that fish come in, I'll be honest, but like I say, I do think the colour's dropped out a bit. So a bit, trying to cloud it up a bit made a little bit of sense, but it just never felt like there was even a fish there. Just goes to show you always got to believe, and obviously underwater always suggested that you've got to believe there's fish there, but sometimes you've got to do something to stimulate them. I remember Matt obviously having like 3 or 4 really quick chucks to just try and stimulate the swim, and they're starting to see activity again. That's basically what I've just tried to do there. So I'm going to give this a minute, then another 2 more minute chucks, and then I'll probably have enough time for a longer chuck if I want one. But not saying we're going to win the match, but definitely got a chance of winning my little mini match. So let's see what happens. 1 minute to go. Got that bream obviously on the slop, but I've not managed a second one. I'm settled into a till the whistle cast, which will be about 6 minutes, because I feel like you can't keep chucking every 1 minute, but it did catch me that one bream out of the blue, and there's no reason why I couldn't get dragged in again. It's been a strange day. I feel like I fished a decent match. I've worked hard, had odd bites, probably had, what have I had, seven fish, probably missed 3 or 4 other small fish bites. So I've had, I've had 7 proper bites, which is more than anyone else in the match. So what I've done's worked. I just haven't had the bream, mainly because I don't feel there's been any bream in front of me in numbers. But it's been interesting, and although it's fished hard, it's kept everyone in it, because literally probably £30 going to win the match. And I reckon any second now the whistle's going to go. Be nice if that just pulled round, but I don't think it's going to. I do think the fish have been off bottom a lot of the time, because I've not managed to bore anything on. It's been a case, if you're going to get a bite, it seems to be reasonably quick. But I cottoned onto that fairly quick, so I can't say I've missed a trick. And sometimes you do need a long chuck just to settle things down. So it's been interesting, like chopping and changing feeders has worked, chopping and changing hook baits. I've never really decided whether they really wanted to eat worms. I don't think they were bad, but they weren't a miracle bait. Obviously maggots have caught, I probably had a 50-50 split. But it doesn't feel like you've needed a lot of bait on the bottom, because I've had no line bites. So it's not like there's been a fish milling around picking up the bait and not getting hooked. And that, as they said, is that. And there's not one on the end either. So we'll see if it's enough. Definitely not enough to win the match. Whether it's enough to win my mini match, we'll have to see. So see what they weigh. Well, the results are in and I haven't won it, but winner on the day was Graham West with £25, including 3 sort of, what I'd say, out of season tench. Unusual to catch tench when it's this cold, but I'm sure you're all itching to know, how did I get on? Well, I weighed 18.14, which was enough for 3rd on the day, and I won my mini section. So what I would say is that really illustrates how important it is to keep going to the end. That last bream, which I think was 5.5 pounds, that fish was the difference between 3rd and probably 8th or 9th. So got to keep going to the end, try all those little tricks, and some of them might pay off.